Welcome back, everybody, to A to Z CFB. We are back with a week zero edition, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff today. It is almost college football season. We are just days, minutes, hours away from kicking off up in Ireland for Farmageddon. What a great matchup to even start with. It's one of my favorite matchups, in college football. I think Farmageddon is one of the most underrated rivalries that we have today, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Before we talk about that, I just wanted to thank you guys for clicking on this. Thank you if you are a returning subscriber and if you are somebody who is just checking me out for the first time. I hope you enjoy this episode. And make sure you go follow on TikTok and on Twitter also at A to Z CFB, same as my YouTube. So, as I kind of hinted to already, we will be doing a week zero preview. We will also be going over some other news. We will be going over the Michigan penalties, and we will also be starting more of a another segment to this show where it's just going to be things I find interesting in the college world section that aren't quite as big as something like the Michigan penalties, or or just kind of can't really fit into their own segment. So we will get into those when we get there. So without further ado, I'm going to be going over each of these games, previewing them for you so that you know what you're getting yourself into this weekend. And I'm going to be doing it in order of how excited I am for each one. That by no means means that I'm not excited for any of them. I am super excited for any college football, but there is a level of excitement that I am for all of them, and where this is how we're going to go. That's how I decided to order them. So the first game on the list, which might surprise some people that actually know me, but that's going to be Sam Houston State at Western Kentucky. This is two schools that I have kind of grown to like a lot. Um, but this is kind of the battle of the completely rebuilt programs, but kind of rebuilt in different ways. Sam Houston lost their national championship, well, FCS level national championship winning head coach in Casey Keeler to Temple this last season and is pretty much starting over, but with a lot of the same talent as last season. Hunter Watson is going to return. They also are getting Quavez Humphreys back. This is still going to be, I think, one of the better teams in their conference. But I just think that they're going to be a very different team, and this is obviously going to be very telling. Obviously, they're playing football as to what they're going to look like. On the other side, Western Kentucky, now they're going to try to see if they can turn another guy this into a 5,000 yard plus passer. This year being Abilene Christian transfer Maverick McIver after they kind of got killed this season in the transfer portal. So it's, one of those things that now we get to see what these guys are able to put together. Um I probably would have been a little more excited for this game had it been the beginning of last season, but it's still going to be a hell of a matchup this season. And very excited to see how that turns out. Next, UNLV versus Idaho State. This was actually supposed to be a week one matchup, but due to some scheduling conflicts, they ended up deciding to move this to week zero. Now, why would I have an FCS program uh, on a list higher than the FBS programs? Well, it's not really as much the Idaho State, although this is a very up and coming program in the FCS ranks. They have a very young head coach in Cody Hawkins, and it does seem like in a couple years, who knows? Maybe they'll be in contention to join the Mountain West when they eventually have to get rebuilt after this purge to the new pack. But UNLV is pretty interesting. They're kind of in the midst of a quarterback battle that I've come to understand will go on throughout the season between Alex Orji, the Michigan transfer, and Anthony Calandria, the Virginia transfer. This is going again to be very telling as to what this does, right? This is how this happens. This is going to be a really fun game as well because we get to see what first time head coach, or not first time head coach, but first year head coach Dan Mullen, who happens to be a very experienced head coach, can do at this UNLV team. Will they finally put the money in and become a powerhouse program, or are they just going to continue to run the Mountain West when Boise State leaves next year? And we'll have to see, but this will be a good test to see. This will just be a fun way to find out what UNLV is made of. A team that a lot of people, frankly, think could be a playoff team. Next is going to be Fresno State versus Kansas. This doesn't seem like a game that I think is super cut and dry. Oh, the power team's going to win, right? I don't know if I think Kansas is absolutely going to win this game. They're breaking out their, but that being said, they're breaking out their new stadium. They have the same old offense under Lance Leipold. They are, still kind of reeling from some of their losses a couple years ago. And is this finally the year that they're going to that Jalen Daniels is going to actually be the guy that everyone expects him to be, or that he was like heralded to be going into last season. That being said, Fresno State, known giant killer, is in a very fun situation right now. They have a new head coach in Matthew Entz, as well as a new quarterback, EJ Warner, who is the son of NFL Hall of Famer Kurt Warner. He is transferred in to replace Mikey Keene, who went to Michigan, who actually in a fun little quarterback snake, is part of the reason why Alex Orji then now went to UNLV. Kansas has been slated to be a good team in the last couple of years and hasn't really done that. And it's not impossible for them to be good this year. I don't think they're going to be necessarily a bad team this year. And Fresno State also hasn't really blown anyone out of the water recently. And this is their last opener as a not MAC, as a Mountain West team. And I think that, they are looking to go out with a bang. I think both these teams will be fighting really hard in this. And I think that, this is just going to be a good, fun game to watch. The next exciting game is going to be Stanford at Hawaii. Death, taxes, and week zero Hawaii football. Everything I look forward to every year. It'll be the thing that I settle down at around 7:30 Eastern time and watch at the very end of my first fun Saturday of watching college football. With an absolutely imploded Stanford team, this is a really, really great opportunity for Hawaii to notch an impressive or at least a win over a Power Five team. Sorry, Power Four team. Uh, with Ben Branson starting at Stanford, it doesn't really seem like they are going to be a powerhouse of a team this year. But on the other side, Hawaii is kind of in an unprecedented situation with a really young, talented quarterback in Micah Alejado, getting coached by a head coach in Timmy Chang, who is about as invested in Hawaiian football as you can possibly have. They're going to, I think, be an okay, if not pretty solid upper half of the league team in the Mountain West this year. And absolutely, this is anybody's game to win, especially with some of the veteran presence they have, like wide receiver Pofele Ashlock, who has been one of the better wide receivers in college football from a pure statistics standpoint. Finally, though, and I've already kind of hinted on this, but this is obviously the number one matchup of the day, and that's going to be Farmageddon in Dublin. The number 22 Iowa State Cyclones versus the number 17 Kansas State Wildcats is going to be in Dublin in a neutral site. Farmageddon and about the most farming country you can possibly have. And I think it's going to be awesome. And you have two teams that really could not be that much different. So with an offseason of returning talent, right, this Wildcats team is, dare I say, the favorites to win the conference. If you watched a couple episodes back, I said that Texas Tech was probably going to win my conference, and I don't think it's going to be a blowout by anyone by any means, but I absolutely can see Kansas State winning the Big 12 and what is going to be a huge logjam of a conference like it is every year. On the other side, Iowa State, while Rocco Becht is losing is two number one targets to the Houston Texans. Ironically, they both got drafted the same place. They're going to they still have a pretty solid run game and are going to have one of the best defenses in college football. These teams are about as similar and as different as you can get. And it's at this point, I think my official prediction is going to be Kansas State winning, just because I think they have a little more congruency on offense. But defensively, both of these will probably be top 3 to 5 defenses in the Big 12, and will probably be in the top 10 to 15 range in all of college football. This is a game I'm very excited for, and I'm pretty pumped that it's happening right front and center in the middle of the day. Honestly, I couldn't think of a much better way to start off the 2025-2026 NFL season. All right. Now that I've gone over them, I will go through and real quick give my official predictions. So Game one, Sam Houston versus Western Kentucky. I think that Western Kentucky is going to take that. First year head coach in Sam Houston. We have a lot of returning talent on the Western Kentucky front. And it's in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So I think they're going to win that. Idaho State versus UNLV. I am always tending to go with the FBS program, especially one as talented as UNLV. I don't think that's too much of a pick. I'm going to go with UNLV. Next, Fresno State at Kansas. I do think that Kansas is going to win this game, but if it was on the road, I could absolutely be talked out of a Kansas victory on this. I think that Kansas, being with the returning talent that they have in a new stadium, it's going to be, Lawrence is going to be absolutely pumping. I think that Kansas does win this game, but I don't know if it's as comfortable as maybe they'd like it to be. Stanford at Hawaii. I'm taking Hawaii in this. I do think that Ben Branson is a really good quarterback, but I just don't see the vision for Stanford after what was one of the worst off seasons in college football. That being said, Hawaii, like I said, with Timmy Chang and one of the most talented teams that they've had in years, I do think should be able to pull this out, especially since it's in Hawaii. And finally, number 2, Iowa State versus number 17, Kansas State. I do think that Kansas State is going to win this game. I think Farmageddon in the first game of the season gets taken by the Wildcats, and I think that ends up being a really big game down the stretch. I think that Rocco Becht is going to have a tough time adjusting to his new receivers, and I think that Kansas State's defense is going to be too much for this too new offense. And I think Avery Johnson, if he limits his mistakes, can be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. All right, moving on from this beginning part, moving on from going over the games this week. I am just so excited. I don't even know how to, I can't really even contain myself. I am just so excited for college football being back this Saturday. Let me know where you're watching from. Is any of you guys going to the games? Are you just watching on the couch? I can only assume that if you're not watching college football with me, you're watching college football against me. So I hope everybody's watching college football with me on this great week 0 Saturday. The next thing we're going to go over is the Michigan penalties. I know I'm a couple days late to this, but Michigan, tried to lower the penalty that was going to be given to them by suspending Sherrone Moore for games 3 and 4 of the season, which, if we are familiar with this, we know that this is kind of BS. We knew they were going to get more than that, right? And when the NCAA came down, they came down spineless, right? The NCAA did not end up handing down much. It was initially reported that they were fined $20 million, along with a ban from revenue for postseason play for 2 years. And now we find out that the official verbiage is they get 10% of the scholarships awarded in the 2025-2026 academic year, which is going to look more like $30 million, as well as an additional game for Sherrone Moore, which will be enforced in Germany against Western Michigan next year. And then Jim Harbaugh got a 10-year Showtime ban, as well as Connor Stalions got an 8-year Showtime ban. So what? So what? What is $30 million to Michigan, right? Yes, that's a lot of money, but they still got Savion Hitter, right? It's not like it's affecting their recruiting. Not to mention that there are schools who are currently banned from postseason play for much less. Just great. Not that grades shouldn't matter, but you're looking at Akron and Kent State who aren't able to play in the postseason. Not that either would probably make it, but they're not allowed to play in the postseason, and they didn't have a huge cheating scandal. If you ask me, what has happened here is you have to think of it in one of two camps. All right. Camp one is that the NCAA does not actually think that Michigan broke any rules. But maybe they technically did something. So in fear of worse backlash, they have given Michigan some sort of a penalty, right? They added this meaningless game suspension to add on to the other 2 meaningless game suspensions in weeks 3 and 4 that Michigan self-imposed. But on the books, it looks like a huge fine that I wonder whose pockets are getting lined with that money. And three game fines, and we've banned Connor Stalions and Jim Harbaugh from you know, coaching and being part of the college football institute. It doesn't matter. Neither of them were coming back anyway. Or the second camp is that you do think Michigan is guilty, and you just are now admitting that as the NCAA, as the governing body of college athletics, you now no longer have the power or the ability to really put a hurting on a program. If you want to actually like prevent teams from doing something like this, you're going to have to come at them a lot harder than meaningless suspensions because all this proves to me is that teams can fully cheat and get away with it. And even when they are proven guilty, they shouldn't, that nothing will happen. I'm not saying that Michigan officially should lose their national championship or be banned from postseason play or anything. In fact, I think that it's ridiculous that we're now almost 4 years removed from the situation, and uh, we're now just getting a ruling coming down from the NCAA. This should have been dealt with 2 years ago at most. Now you're really only hurting players who had nothing to do with the situation to begin with. You have maybe a handful of players who were on the team back then. You have Sharon Moore, who was deleting text messages, and that's it. You waited. Now you don't get to do a good punishment or get to do a fair punishment because you waited too long. It doesn't make sense to me, frankly. And I think this is going to be cited as one of the nails in the coffin come down the line when the NCAA eventually crumbles and we are now looking at a new governing body because this organization has time in and time again failed the sport of college football. They are unable to actually put together any sort of real legislation. They are unable to agree on anything. If they cared about college athletics at all, they would have come to an agreement about what was apparently a huge cheating scandal years ago. And we would have dealt with this and we would have moved on. And we, as all these programs, could have moved on. I don't have to say, oh, maybe they should have to sit their head coach against Oklahoma. That would hurt them the most since that's Sharon's alma mater. Now I don't have to say, oh, maybe they should find them even more money. Maybe they should ban them from postseason play because these players right now in Michigan should not get banned from postseason play. These players for the vast majority of them who were not on the team for the national championship that year should not be harmed by the or should not feel any backlash from the from what had happened, you know, 3 4 years ago now. Not to mention that there are plenty of other instances where things just get completely overlooked, especially when you're looking at programs like Michigan that are super big that are going to make these people in the ivory tower so much money that it would cost them more money to ban them from postseason play than it would be to uphold the integrity of college football as it is. All right. That is my rant. I am done with that rant. Thank you for listening to that. That was a that felt pretty good, honestly, to get that off my chest. Um, I don't know what the NCAA is doing. This is not the first time the NCAA has pissed me off. It's not the last time they pissed me off. They'll probably piss off everybody forever. And that's the nature of the governing body. But they should be pissing people off for the reasons of, oh, this was too fair and this was too like they should you should be the parent, I guess, is what they're supposed to be, and they're just not. All right, moving on to the last overarching segment of this podcast, um, called "Things That I Find Interesting in the College Football World" section. This is a section where, look, we're just going to add some of these things. I'm going to add this to the end of some episodes where it's just things in college football that I found interesting or fun or are worth talking about, but aren't necessarily worth their own segment. The first thing, kind of the smaller of the two, is BYU quarterback Bear Bachmeier. It's pretty fun, I think. Bear Bachmeier, with the departure of Jake Retzlaff, is going to now be the first time a true freshman has started at quarterback to open the season for BYU. Kind of a mouthful of a first time, but it is still kind of cool, right? A storied program like Brigham Young is now getting their first time starting a true freshman. Not many, programs can say this would be their first time. Not to mention he has a cool name, Bear. His younger brother's named Tiger. They have another brother named Hank. This is kind of a fun family. I mean, if I'm Hank, I'm probably wishing my name was like Lion or something, but they have Bear and Tiger. That's pretty cool. But Bear, right, came over in that imploding Stanford team mid-spring and still won the quarterback job, which leads you to believe that he's a pretty talented quarterback. Often we see wide receivers and running backs and even some like DNs and linebackers and such sport like take advantage in college and wear numbers like and single digit numbers. Maybe we saw like Ty Robinson in Nebraska last year wear number 9. We see all the time running backs and stuff wearing single digits when it just recently was allowed in the NFL, but it was kind of fun in college because it wasn't we weren't used to it. Very rarely do we get to see that same right flexed in the opposite direction, where Bear Bachmeier is wearing number 47. Did you imagine? All right, let me paint you a picture. You're in Utah, or, obviously Utah. It's the Holy War, Utah versus BYU. You're going out to stadiums jumping around. You're all excited. You're on your blues and your red uniforms. And all of a sudden comes trotting out number 47 at quarterback, and he proceeds to drop 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on your head by somebody wearing number 47. It's so ugly. It's cool, right? It's one of those dogs where you're like, oh, that dog is really ugly, but it's so ugly that I just want to squeeze it, right? It's you just want to hug the dog. That's kind of what this is doing for me. I don't know. It's maybe I'm the only one that thinks this is kind of cool that we're seeing all this in a quarterback wearing number 47 and it has a fun name and everything like that. Um, but I'm super excited to watch it, and I definitely think it was something I wanted to talk about. But I didn't think it was necessarily big enough to go into um its own section. Now, this next thing though, take coming to you from Auburn, Alabama. This might have been big enough to have its own section. I'm pretty sure earlier this week Auburn woke up and they said, "Hey, we have a football program, don't we?" And that football program starts playing football really soon. Um, so they did a lot of things. One of those things is they decided to claim 4 new national championships. Now, I think that they are justified in those claims, especially if you look at some of the other claimed championships over the last 150 years, right? There are a lot of teams that have claimed championships when maybe they didn't necessarily deserve it. I do think it's interesting that Auburn is deciding to claim them now, and they didn't do it back then, right? If you're going to cite some level of moral high ground and be the bigger program and not claim those national championships, I feel like you got to stick with that. But hey, they did it. They're entitled to those national championships, and I don't really have a problem with it. Um, Next thing they did, uh, they retired Cam Newton's number. Good for them. No problems with that either. Um, what else did they do? They decided to lose their minds and have a mild stroke when talking about their offense this year. They said Hugh Freeze said that they were going to be calling the offense as a group. This is apparently a group decision, calling offensive plays, where you're going to have your offensive coordinator, uh, Derek Nix, who will be calling the first down plays. You will have your quarterbacks coach, Coach Austin Will, calling your third down plays. And then Hugh Freeze is going to do the rest, plus have override ability or overrule ability in order to ultimately have the final say. I think this is very quickly going to turn into Hugh Freeze just full-time calling the offense. Um, but that's not the only thing they're doing as friends, as a big old cuddle puddle there in Auburn, Alabama. They are also going to be having a quarterback, not even by committee, but they're just going to be playing 3 quarterbacks. And they said that they were going to be playing 3 quarterbacks in week 1. Now, I might be able to see week 2 when they play Ball State, but they are going to Waco, Texas to face a pretty good Baylor team who is only using 1 quarterback and has a pretty solid play calling system in, I think, one person calls the plays. Uh, And they're going to go try to play this with three people calling the offense, three people playing quarterback, and a partridge in a pear tree. This game has pretty solidly important implications for the SEC as they stand. If they go and get blown out of the water by Baylor, this is just furthering that the SEC isn't what they used to be. This definitely helps conferences like the Big 12, right? A team like Auburn that was kind of slated, um, to be one of the better teams, at least from a talent perspective, in the Big 12, in the SEC next year. But if they get beaten by a Big 12 program, especially one that isn't necessarily viewed as the top of the conference. And then let's just say Baylor goes on to not be very good in the Big 12. I'm not saying they will or won't. I'm just saying in this hypothetical, that looks really, really bad for Auburn, even if they figure it out and then end up winning 9 games this season. I think we're kind of in this transitional period where the Big Ten has been a lot more dominant. And I think that the SEC is kind of losing it a little bit. As far as what they are and are to the rest of the college football landscape. I don't know how much longer we'll be able to say their schedule is tough because it's an SEC schedule, not unlike other programs like Clemson, who needs to say my schedule is tough because I played SEC teams. How much longer we have for that, I'm not sure, but it's games like this, the out of conference SEC games, that are going to be a huge part in determining those things down the stretch. Um, and I think it's just really interesting that Auburn is handling it so callously. Who knows? Maybe it works. Maybe this is the perfect system, and everyone else is just a fool for not doing it. But my hunch and being around the game almost my entire life, not almost my entire life being around this game of football has told me otherwise. And while I do think that they have the talent to be a very good team this year, I definitely worry about how Hugh Freeze and friends are handling things down in Auburn, Alabama. All right, that is all I have for you guys today. Again, I'm so excited for this weekend. We laughed, we cried, we hugged in this episode. I didn't hug anyone in this episode, but it was still a super fun episode to make and write and everything. And again, if you made it this far, thank you very much. Consider subscribing. This was, like I said, a ton of fun. And go follow me on TikTok. I post. We are almost done going through all 136 FBS programs. We have tomorrow and Saturday, and the last three will be posted between during the day tomorrow and in the morning on Saturday, right before you are getting ready to watch your first weekend of college football. And yeah, thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.